Oh, I'm going to just clean my windows here. Pardon me, I should have done that before I started. I keep forgetting. Anyway, I'm making my stew. There it is. It's all cooked up now. I should probably dump it into a bowl, I guess. Dump this into a bowl. Ooh, there we go. Hey, there we go now. Oh, look at that. Look at that. Beautiful. I'm losing pieces of stew here. That's not good. We need to just keep moving along here. Let me see you there. Bowl, this pot, this full of beautiful stew. I do like my stew. I truly do. Yeah, I do. Anyway, I'm going to tell you guys a story, and it's kind of an interesting thing. It goes back about 30 years now. I used to go up to Ottawa quite a bit to visit family up there. I have a half sister up there. She lived up there in a house with her mother. And now her mother was an old common law wife of my dad's from back in the 60s. She was the woman my dad was with before he got involved with my mom. And so that's what makes this person my half-sister. So the person I'm going to talk about, though, isn't related to me in any physical way. He would be the brother of my sister's mother. So he'd be my sister's uncle. That's who he'd be, but he's not related to me. Anyway, I had a conversation with that man about 30 years ago at the kitchen table. And he was an older man by that time, as you might imagine. A fellow by the name of Greg Munn. Now, anyway, I'll call him Uncle Greg, just to make things easier, because that's what everybody around there would call him, you know. Very nice man, and actually a Christian man, too. Very faithful Christian man. But I'm going to tell you something he told me. And he was kind of outraged about this, too, because he saw it coming. And he told me about it. And he said to me, he said, Tom, within 20 years, we're going to see Sharia law in this country. Now, I'm in Canada, just for point of reference. This is Canada, where I am. He said, within 20 years, we're going to see that. Now, he's passed away. That's why I'm saying his name, because there's no danger to him at this point. He's untouchable. Once you die, there's nothing in this world can get you. Of course, I could be gotten, I suppose, but I don't care. I've made up my mind that I'm going to be outspoken about this stuff, and I am. I may get into trouble with YouTube for this. I may even get into trouble with the government, with the police, and everything else for what I'm about to say. But I think that people need to talk about this stuff, because if we don't talk about it and acknowledge it, it grows. Now, 30 years ago, when I had that conversation with that man, this was back in around 1996, 1995, 96, somewhere in there, 97, somewhere in there. I had this conversation with that man. That's what he said to me. Now, at the time, I didn't take him too seriously because there was no indication that that would happen. We had some immigrants from those countries for sure, but you know, that they weren't taking over or anything. They were just here, and most of them were assimilating, really, or at least they seemed to be. And so I thought that it's far-fetched. Now, I won't say I thought it was impossible, because I think anything is possible. And so I don't discount things on the basis of them not seeming likely at the present time. To me, you know, I might look and say that doesn't seem likely as things sit right now, but that doesn't mean it couldn't happen. And so I would have to acknowledge that two things. Back then, I believed it could happen, but I also believed it was far-fetched. Well, I was wrong to believe it was far-fetched. Now, Greg Munn, Uncle Greg, he was right in what he said. He was wrong about the timeline. It didn't happen in 20 years, and it still hasn't happened. We don't actually have Sharia law here yet. 30 years has gone by, so he's 10 years off schedule in his prediction. But still, I'm looking at it now and I'm seeing that it's becoming more and more likely. And I'm remembering that conversation in which that man told me that. And I'm thinking that it's entirely possible. You know, based on what I'm seeing now, it's entirely possible. Now, I'm going to tell you my theory as far as the end times goes and as far as the Antichrist goes. Now, this is just my theory, so you can make what you want of it. I may be completely wrong in what I'm saying. This is just what the theory I have formulated about certain things based upon my observations and my view of the world, my worldview as an old white man, basically, which right now that's about the most pathetic thing you can be in this society, it seems, as an old white straight man. I don't identify as anything but a man. I'm 57 years old, so I'm not a young man anymore. No, I'm not elderly. I'm not in my 70s or 80s, but I'm also not a young man anymore. I'm an old guy, you know. Like I say, I'm not old like somebody in their 70s or 80s, but I'm not young either. So I have some miles under my belt and I have some experience, is what I'm saying. I'm a lot more experienced now than I was when I had that conversation with Uncle Greg 30 years ago. Now, even 30 years ago, I was pretty experienced for my age, though. I'd seen a lot of stuff. For a man who was in his late 20s, I still had saw a lot of stuff. So I had more experience than most, and that's probably why I didn't discount it completely. I just figured it doesn't seem very likely as things sit at the present time. Anyway, bottom line is Uncle Greg is looking more and more right. Obviously, his timeline was off. It didn't happen in 20 years like he said it would. But I think we're seeing the beginnings of it now. Now, I'm going to tell you my theory about who the Antichrist is going to be. Now, this is just my theory. This is just one man speaking here. This comes from what I believe, and I'm not quoting any other source. This is just what I believe. I believe that the Antichrist is going to be who the Muslim people refer to as the Mahdi. And in the Muslim religion, the Mahdi is the avenger. He's the one who's going to come, and he's going to take all the infidels out. And I believe that would be the Antichrist. And I believe the day for his appearance is coming soon. And I see everything coming into place now for it. I see all the technology in place now to actually enforce the mark of the beast. The surveillance technology, the money type technology now, all the electronic money. I see them trying to get rid of paper money, of coins and currency, of bills and so on. I see them trying to get rid of that, make everything electronic. They want you to receive your bills electronically, and they want you to pay them electronically. They want you to do all your banking electronically. They want you to do all your buying and selling electronically. They want you to do it all through e-transfers and Interac and credit cards and so on. That's what they want. And they're pushing more and more for that. And they're trying to tell us that cash is no good because, somebody could come and steal your cash, or, so you have a pocket full of money, somebody could hold you up or whatever. Well, I can tell you as a man who has some experience and is streetwise, I would much sooner have cash in my pocket than electronic currency in the bank. Because I can't handle the bank. If the bank takes my money, like they've done in Canada, they've frozen people's accounts for having the, quote, wrong opinions, unquote. I can't deal. Who am I going to fight? What am I going to do? If some asshole comes up to me on the street and pulls a knife on me or a gun and says, give me your money, well, for one thing, if that happens, all I'm going to lose is what I have in my pocket if I give it up. And I might decide to fight him and I might win, or I might lose my life. But still, that would be my decision. Now in Canada, if I win the fight with the guy, chances are I'm going to be criminally charged for assaulting him because we don't have a right of self-defense in this country. Well, we kind of do, but we don't. It's very vague. I shouldn't say we don't because that's not really accurate. We have a right to defend ourselves within reasonable limits, which is to be determined at our trial, I guess. I can tell you I can't afford to pay $100,000 to fight a charge in court. So if I get charged with something like that, I'm going to jail because I just can't. I have no money for a defense. And legal aid won't pay for a defense. Legal aid will pay you for a mouthpiece to go in and make a deal with the prosecutor to get you less time. That's about it. Chicken for Rocky. Hey, Rocky. Rocky, look. There you go. That's for you, my pet. Yeah. Anyway, my belief is that the Antichrist is actually who the Muslims refer to as the Mahdi. Anyway. This is really good. This is really good. Hold on, Rocky. Look. Anyway, it's a funny thing though because Uncle Greg, his timeline was off, but it's looking like his prediction was right on. In my case, I didn't think it would happen as things sat at that time. But times have changed, and it wouldn't have happened as things sat at that time either. So I was right in a way too, but times have changed. And I didn't see things going to the extent that they've gone to now. I had no idea that it was going to get to the point it's at with all this mass immigration from other countries. Now, what I believe is, because a lot of the people coming in are military-age men, I believe that when the Mahdi comes to power, or Antichrist, because I believe they're one and the same. And I keep saying I believe because it really is just my belief. This belief is not sanctioned by anyone else that I know of. And I haven't heard anybody say this before, although somebody may have said it. There may be people who think like I do about it, but if there are, I don't know who they are. And so I'm not quoting anybody or anything else. But here's the thing. I believe that it's a standing army that's being brought in, and they're going to do the Mahdi's bidding. And the Mahdi wants us gone. And see, in order to have a world government, all us old white people, we have to go because we're the resistance, really. We're the ones who don't want it. If anybody is going to not accept that system, it's going to be people like me. They don't want Christians, for one thing, because Christians are infidels. That's the way they see us, And in their own countries even, there's a lot of places where if you are found in possession of a Bible, that's a serious criminal offense. There's places you can be executed for that. And those are Muslim countries. Those are predominantly Muslim countries under Sharia law. There's been talk in this country, in official circles, of allowing certain cases to be tried under Sharia law, at least for people who are of that culture. So say if you come from one of those countries where Sharia law is practiced and you wish to have a case heard according to the rules of Sharia law, a divorce case or a civil case or whatever, I don't think they're talking about criminal cases yet, but it would require a change in the law to do that, because a lot of criminal cases that are covered under Sharia law, where if you're found guilty, you're put to death, and at least officially, we've done away with the death penalty here, and so we can't really execute people under Sharia law in Canada, not at this point. So it would require a major shift in the law to allow that, but we'd have to go back, pre 1976 is what we would have to do to allow that. Because 1976 was the year that capital punishment was officially eliminated in Canada for all crimes except treason. Nobody was executed for treason, though, in the years since. And I don't think anybody's been executed for treason since, like, World War II. But, as far as I know, at least. And the last judicial executions for murder took place in 1962. There were two men hanged together. They were dropped at the same time through the trap door at the Don Jail in Toronto. And those men were both men who were convicted of two separate murders. One of them, the murder of a FBI informant who was actually from Detroit. That guy was a fella. Oh, what was his name now? I can't think of it offhand. The other guy was a local guy from Toronto. His name was Ronald Turpin, and he was convicted of the murder of a Toronto police officer. But the other guy, I can't think of his name now. He was a black man from Detroit, and there's some question about his guilt. Ronald Turpin was definitely guilty, but the other guy, he may not have been. Anyway, and he was from Detroit anyway. He was an American citizen, and he was accused of coming up to Canada and killing an FBI informant who was being hidden up here until at such time as he could testify in some court case in the United States. Anyway, there was nearly an execution in 1974 of a man by the name of Rene Vaillancourt. But he got a reprieve. Very close to the hour he was going to be hanged, he got a reprieve. I remember when that happened. I remember watching it on the news and listening to it on the radio. It was a big news story in this country because it was going to be our first legal execution since 1962. Anyway, a couple of years later, capital punishment was done away with, officially, except for treason. Like I said, capital punishment for treason was done away with in 1998. But anyway, it would require a complete shift in our laws in order to make Sharia law work, because Sharia law calls for the death of certain people if they're convicted of certain crimes, Anyway, the thing is, though, for civil cases, there has been talk of allowing Sharia law for those who are of that culture and who want it. Now, see, this is how we do things here, though. We slowly introduce things. We don't just hit people upside the head with stuff. We bring it in gradually, and people get used to it. We bring it in, we say, okay, under certain circumstances, we're going to do this. Very limited circumstances. And then we say, well, we're going to expand that now to a few more things, just because it seems like we ought to do that, And then gradually people accept it, They say, oh, well, what if those people want to go under Sharia law for a divorce case or a lawsuit or whatever, then, that's fine. That's their culture after all. We need to respect that. That's fine. And that tends to be how Canadians are. But then what happens is it gets introduced more and more, and it covers more and more, and it gets expanded to a greater number of people in the population. And then it's not an option anymore that this is how we're going to do it. There's no longer an option that when you're in court, this is how things are going to be handled. And then we extend it to criminal cases, and we extend it to criminal cases involving anybody. See, that's where this is going. And this is what we do. We're the country with the frog slowly boiling in the pot. You know, we put the frog in the pot of cool water, and you turn up the heat slowly, and the water gets warmer and warmer, and then it gets hot, and then it boils. And the frog will boil to death because it doesn't know enough to jump out of the boiling water. Well, we are that frog. Here in Canada, we are that frog, unfortunately. But my belief is, and I see things coming together to make what I believe more and more likely. Just like I see things coming together to make what Uncle Greg said more and more likely 30 years ago. You know, what he said 30 years ago, more and more likely. What I see happening is that the Mahdi will come to power, that there'll be a war in the Middle East. The Mahdi will come to power. Basically, Israel will be conquered. And then at that point, the Mahdi will sit in the temple. The temple's about to be rebuilt, by the way. That's another thing that's coming true. The Mahdi will sit in the temple, which will be the abomination of desolation that's spoken about in the book of Revelation. And he will declare himself leader of everyone. And then all these cells, these people that are just here now, they're going to be activated. All these people who come from all these other places, all these young men, that's a military force, and it's going to be activated against us. And that's what I believe will happen anyway. And Sharia law will be introduced, and that will be part of the beast system. Now again, I may be totally off base. Maybe none of that will happen, or maybe it won't happen the way I say it'll happen. Maybe some of it will happen and some of it won't. The way I say it'll happen. But it's looking more and more like this idea that I have that the Mahdi and the Antichrist are one and the same. It's looking more and more like that's going to be the case. Just like it's looking more and more that Uncle Greg's idea that Sharia law was going to be introduced in this country. It's looking more and more like that's happening too. Anyway, one thing I think we can all agree on, and that we all know, if we know our Bible at all, is that there's some things coming, and they're not going to be altogether pleasant. And we need to stand our ground, and we need to always, be for Jesus Christ, eh? If you're a believer in Jesus Christ, you can't allow fear, even fear of death, to deter you from always upholding the name of Jesus Christ, and of always, and we do what he wants us to do, not what the Antichrist, who I think will be the Mahdi. Maybe I'm wrong, but we know there's going to be an Antichrist, whether I'm right or wrong about who it is. We need to always uphold the name of Jesus Christ, even if it means death. And for some of us, it will mean death. Make no mistake, and the Bible tells us that too. Anyway, that's it. I see it coming. It's getting closer all the time. And if you're alive in these times, you're alive in these times for a reason, because you have some role to play here. That's it. I hope you're all doing well. And like I say, don't let it get you down, because It's all part of what has to happen. It's all part of God's plan. And we know that sometimes when we're going through parts of God's plan, it gets pretty rough sometimes. God takes us over some pretty rough roads and through some pretty rough territory sometimes. But He's always with us. He's always with us while we go through that. So never forget that. All right. Bye for now.